we start with how to self-regulate. We get ice packs. It's a big part of freediving, and releasing the body has to do with that MDR, the mammalian dive response. So if we add the cold water with the ice packs on the back of the neck and on the chest, thoracic spine, or on the face, there seems to be effective enough for this process to start. Then we learn breath work, which is a 5-second inhale, a 2-second pause, and a 10-second exhale. Exhale is double the inhale. You're activating your rest and digest. Now you've got that cold water feeling on your back. Your heart rate in 2 minutes is going to drop down. What can that do for pain management? A lot. If you are tense, you're not breathing, and your heart rate's activated or elevated because you're scared, you're nervous, here comes a migraine, I've lost the rest of my day. If you implement this, even this kind of practice, it might steer you off onto a different course.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson, and today we're joined by Elaine Hicks, the underwater therapist. Elaine is a licensed clinical social worker, certified substance abuse counselor, and free diving instructor. She specializes in blending trauma-informed therapy with the transformative health benefits of free diving, creating a unique approach to wellness that doesn't even require stepping into the water. Elaine is the creator of the Hicks dive method, an integrative system that focuses on self-regulation, nervous system health, and mental resilience. Through her trauma-informed freediving course and private practice, Elaine empowers individuals to tap into their eighth superpower, interoception, to unlock healing, manage stress, and connect with their inner calm. In today's conversation, we discuss polyvagal theory and how Elaine uses her experience as a free diving instructor to empower women to connect with their bodies and become responsive instead of reactive. In addition to supporting healing, these techniques can greatly improve quality of life. Elaine, welcome to the podcast.
So good to be here.
I was like, okay, we have to hit record. I'm so excited for listeners to get to know you. And I would love for you to share, because I find what you're doing to be really unique and pioneering. How did you get to be the underwater therapist? And then we'll get into some of the goodies that I think are invaluable for the autoimmune community to learn about.
Thank you. Super stoked to be here. When I saw your podcast, as I was telling you before, have so many I want to listen to, and I feel pretty lucky to be able to share some of my stuff with your audience. So the underwater therapist has been many years in the making. My quote unquote day job is I'm a licensed clinical social worker, which means I do therapy, program evaluation, data stuff, tracking outcomes, kind of the equivalent of a psychologist plus a little bit more. No offense to any psychologists out there, but we do just as much work plus. So in my work as a social worker and substance use counseling, I got introduced to freediving right before COVID happened. So I was like an extreme aggressive snorkeler, which is like pretty unsafe. You're diving down to like maybe 10 feet. You're trying to get your ears to pop. But it was just so amazing and incredible to be in the waters of Hawaii. Are some of the best shore diving opportunities you could ever have. And during COVID, everything was shut down here. It was especially challenging because the only things we could do was fish, go swimming, or go diving. We couldn't, of course, be with our friends. And so we went out to a special beach where we had heard rumors that there would be big animals like fins. And so I'm out there freaking out because we're like 200 meters offshore, maybe 300. we're in the middle of the ocean. There's no one around us. And this pod of like 50 dolphins comes at us at 100 miles an hour. And I was terrified. And then these spearfishers come rolling by and they're diving down to 40 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that has to be me. I want to do this. So I took a freediving course as soon as everything opened. And this class taught me so much about my strength and my power and how you can use it differently in the water. It's not brute force. You're never going to win if you're fighting the water ever. You have to flow into it. And I saw all at the same time the intersection between mental health, trauma healing, what my body was doing in response to this challenge that I picked, and how I just saw it could be something very life-changing in controlled settings. Now, I had no idea how that was going to unfold, but as a researcher, as someone who values data evaluation and checking and making sure things are evidence-based, I was like, I gotta do this. So I signed up maybe a month later for an instructor course. That was that December.
Wow.
So I took my class in April. December, I was in Mexico in Playa del Carmen taking a 3-week freediving instructor course. Amazing. And I was not the typical student you would see in a course like this. So it was very challenging physically. So from there, I started talking about trauma-informed freediving and mental health benefits of freediving. And then the more I've researched it and kind of brought things together, and then putting on polyvagal theory, this way of understanding our nervous system in a different way, it just opened up so many portals of understanding is probably the best way I can. And when I drilled into that, it came down to how aware are we of our nervous system? How aware of our breath rate, our blink rate, our swallow rate, things that are easy to get in touch with that don't throw people into their body so rapidly that they shut down. And that can happen when we're sick, when we've had COVID, we have autoimmune, we have all kinds of things going on. We want to disconnect from the body. Yeah. So by overlaying this polyvagal kind of theory onto the freedive body and the traumatized body, the body in survival, the body in chronic shutdown or chronic hypervigilance, it just brought up so many different avenues of healing.
I love that. And almost everybody I have interviewed on the podcast gets to their zone of genius through, their personal experience, right? And then we want to take that and share it, help others. I want to circle back, just to give a little foundation for listeners that we have done episodes on the vagus nerve and polyvagal theory, but I want to hear your perspective and share with listeners. I think that's a great starting point. And then I want to, kind of bring in that the freediving body, as you mentioned, and relating to, obviously not all listeners are freedivers, and I'll let everybody know right now, you do not need to freedive to take advantage of Elaine's wisdom and genius. So, let's start with the basics of polyvagal theory as you see it.
The way I understand polyvagal and use it with even the clients I work with in my private practice is that it breaks down the nervous system into 3 kind of zones. And then you have portals of entry into the zones. So your nervous system's like this universe inside of you, and you have portals to enter this universe. And so the 3 zones, if we start from the top down, we have ventral, which is you're safe, getting connected, finding resources. When I teach about this to substance use counselors, I call this the panda zone because it's playful. When you're safe and engaged, you can talk to people, you can pay your bills, you can find your keys, right? It's practical stuff. And so within that zone, there's particular mechanisms through your cranial nerves, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your throat, and how we connect and relate to people. So it becomes like these zones become very relatable on a day-to-day basis. And then you have your sympathetic, or I call it the lion zone, because you can be mobilized for play, for teamwork, competition. You can be mobilized for protection, which can look like fight or flight, or, it can be wonder, curiosity, and joy. It doesn't have to be just anger and disruption. And that's kind of how I recategorize that. Yeah, if you're mobilized, maybe you're excited. Maybe you're scared, and you should be scared because you're doing something big and that's going to grow you, you know. And then the last would be like mid diaphragm and down, like the dorsal or the dolphins. This is where we can have a quiet rest and we can withdraw from all of our day-to-day kind of things and have quiet activities, restorative activities, or we can withdraw and shut down. And then, of course, all of these zones hang out with each other and they make these blended states that are beautiful, So I think understanding how each of these, what the basic function of each one is, and then how they're blended together really helps people understand what's going on with their bodies in different ways. And then maybe they can change their physiology, like I mentioned, breath rate, blink rate, heart rate, things you can change right away through that eighth superpower, which is how I learned about. And it's another key part of polyvagal is deteroception. And then this concept of neuroception, which explains all these automatic reactions or responses we have to things. Because your nervous system's 24/7 listening to keep you safe, which is good, but also can be very annoying. Right? Because until you learn how to listen and work with it and create this like partnership, you could spend your life reacting instead of responding.
Yes. And that's really at the heart of the whole point.
Yes.
Is that learning to be in a responsive state instead of a reactive state. And as we were chatting before we hit record, anytime we're dealing with chronic challenges, but especially chronic health challenges, chronic pain, I have so many people have come to me and been like, oh, I'm not stressed. I'm not. And I'm like, BS. You are so out of touch with what is going on in your body. And I in a non-scientific way and through just my journey and experience, think, it is almost a survival tactic to disconnect. It doesn't serve us long term, but
no, it doesn't.
So we create this pattern of being disconnected from breath, being disconnected from feeling, being, not even that, like you mentioned, awareness, not aware of what state we're actually in. And for me, the reason I love just sharing this understanding of it's chicken or egg, right? Like you can change stress state with breath, with, and feed each other, right? So you can relax. Absolutely. Or sometimes if you can't relax, you can do the things to physiologically make that happen. And as somebody who has a more recent love of being underwater, I think I certified scuba diving 4 years ago, thinking I was doing it for my fiance. He's the kind of guy who I just know, would never, even if I said, I'm happy with a book on the beach, you go scuba diving, he would never go. So I thought, oh, I'll surprise him and I'll certify. I love it more than he does, I think. And
yeah,
you're giving me some clues as to why.
Oh, really? Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's this unification of these two zones of your nervous system, the dolphin and the panda come together, to keep it easy, like your ventral and dorsal. They form this amazing, the most powerful autonomic reflex we have in our entire nervous system, the mammalian diaphragm response or reflex. It's so powerful. It puts you so quickly into your parasympathetic nervous system, which we call rest and digest.
Yes. And heal, right? Like
it heals. Yeah. Long-term vagus nerve restoration. You're choosing to put yourself in a self-regulated state, which leads to relaxation. And you mentioned relaxation. And I think oftentimes if we're dealing with like long COVID, health problems, relaxation feels like a faraway goal.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I've been talking about this a lot the last few months. Is the goal really to relax and be passive?
No.
Or do you want to be self-regulated and function despite, like, yes, all these things are happening, but I want to function. And self-regulation really gets us back into our prefrontal cortex where we can problem solve, find my keys, make coffee. Everybody's got their lunch. I didn't leave any kids outside on the front step. Like, I have done all my things.
Yeah.
I've got this. And I can actually behaviorally respond appropriately as well.
Yeah.
So
Which
is the goal
is
really
different
relaxation?
than pushing
Yes.
in survival mode, right? And so you can heal and function. And I'm so glad you clarified, because when I say relax, I'm thinking physiologically, not sitting around on the couch, not, I mean, you do whatever, do your bliss. But for most of my clients who are perfectionist overachievers, their bliss is not,
It's working.
zoning out. And
Yeah.
it takes a little time for buy-in of this actually makes you perform better. This makes you not leave any kids behind or do any of the things we all don't want to have happen by the end of the day. So I'm a visual person, so I love the fact that I think you are as well, just from how you describe it, your theories, your process. So if we have this basic understanding of polyvagal theory and the importance, now pull in the free diving body for me, because I know this actually just informs your whole unique approach.
It does. So I was mentioning that the typical freediver I work with is about 40. She's usually in perimenopause in retrospect. She doesn't have an average Instagram body. This is a normal woman, right?
Right. A real woman.
A what?
A real woman.
A real woman. Someone who, maybe she's 20 pounds over, but she's strong and she's capable. And she's had challenges getting into freediving classes because she doesn't look the part. And I hate to, I love my sport, but there's a lot of that in her inherent.
And actually, humor me for a second, because we jumped into this conversation.
Yeah,
I'm assuming people know what freediving is. So can we back up for a second?
So you have snorkeling where you wear your mask and your cute little shorty fins, and you have a snorkel in your mouth. Your mask is usually one of those big gnarly ones that cover like most of your face, and your mouth's ready, open for your snorkel. Freediving, we use a low volume mask. We use a tube. There's no tanks. You use long fins and usually a weight belt. And so we dive deeper on a breath hold with full lungs beyond 10 feet. So here, your average typical dive is going to be 33 feet at the max for most people. I mean, there's some recreational freedivers who like to go deeper. Yeah. But at one of our favorite spots here, Electric Beach, the max is going to be 15, 20 feet. Okay. Really, maybe 30. And that's where all the cool stuff is. So freediving lets you interact with nature on a different level. Snorkeling is very surface, so freediving is going down. And then there's several disciplines within freediving. Okay. So we have recreational, and then there's competition, but we even have training. You can do different kinds of training in the pool. There's pool freediving. There's competitions for the pool. There's competitions in the water. You guys have all heard of maybe Alexei Molchanov, or at least seen things in the news about this. There's a documentary on Netflix which only shows competition side at its kind of worst. But there's a whole other beautiful recreational world of your average people just going out there killing it. Not killing it, that's a better way to say it. They're out there just diving their hearts out and having such a great time.
Yeah. Thank
Shallow.
you for that. I
Yeah.
just, and I do think just from the things I've read and what I've seen that most of us, if we have some images in our mind of free diving, it is more of that kind of competition level. I'm
Mhm.
going to say kind of crazy, like really
It's
pushing the
pretty
limits,
intense.
really, really
Yeah.
intense. And
Yeah.
so thank you for sharing that,
Yeah.
there's a whole range and you're talking about the what I would call sensible, enjoyable, recreational free
Practical.
diving. Yeah.
Practical.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's the same with scuba
Yes.
diving.
Mhm.
The beautiful, like really most of what you want to see is not that deep.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
the deeper you go, the darker it is, with different exceptions of what kind of diving you do. But
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I love that you clarify like, hey, there's like this sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the classes I teach, you have to do your skills. There's a series of skills you have to do, but it's all at 10 meters or 33 feet in freedom units. So,
Thank you.
everything in free diving is in meters. So 10 meters is where your skills are: blackout rescue, mask removal. You have to learn how to rescue yourself, you
Yeah.
know,
Which
and
is
yes.
is
Mhm.
not accidental in how
Right.
you are using this work even out of the water.
Yes, absolutely. So what the way polyvagal really works is if we look at neuroception, that unconscious listening of the nervous system to keep you safe.
Mhm.
Remember, this is running 24/7. And then you have interoception, which is your ability to sense and then regulate your internal body states, like changing your heart rate, changing your breath rate, changing your blink rate. And then from there, you can go, oh, are my shoulders really tense and up high by my ears?
Mhm.
Are my butt cheeks clenched? And for those people that you work with that roll in, they're like, oh, I'm not stressed.
Yeah.
I ask my clients the same thing, but I go, wait a minute. How are you holding the steering wheel while you were driving?
Sure.
Do you
Yeah.
have claw marks right here from clenching the wheel? Tell me about what's going on with your jaw. What about the frowns in the forehead? So, like, we carry tension all throughout the body. And when we're in class, there's a part that we do. It's a static breath hold in shallow water, which means you're laying on your belly. You've got your mask on, your snorkel, you're holding a float. I'm right there. It's like 3 feet of water, right? And you hold your breath and you do this interoceptive body scan where you find all the tension. And I'm looking and with permission, I'm just tapping on the different
Mhm.
parts that I see. And then you see people releasing and releasing and releasing all of these tension points, and they're just floating so effortlessly. And then there's a breathe up process. And then I tell them when it's time to hold their breath, they take their snorkel out, I start the timer. Most people are doing 1.5 to 2 minutes with no previous kind of breath holding experience. And it's so empowering, especially for these women, because they're like, of course I can do this. And then all of the ladies that are the people I've been able to train over the last couple of years, they're the like strongest free divers in our community. They're safe as well. And they're
Right.
just very strong because the whole session is building on foundational skills. But at the same time, what are you learning about yourself, your capability? You can swim to 10 meters, and most of them have gone on to 20
Yeah.
with no problems.
Wow. And just give us a little bit of a guess of a reference point of a tense person who
Yes.
hasn't done the body scanning and the difference of when somebody filled with tension tries to hold their breath.
Mhm.
Like how long guess on average.
Maybe 30 seconds,
Yeah.
because when you're tense and shriveled up, think about this right
Yeah.
now when you've had pain. And how are you shrinking and compressing your thoracic,
Mhm.
your stomach and your sides and your shoulders when you're compressing and holding yourself in really tight because maybe you're bracing yourself for bad news from the doctor or something, perhaps. You know, you can't expand your lungs. And
Right.
then oftentimes people who are that tense are not breathing into their diaphragm.
Right.
They're shallow breathing up in their chest. So maybe they're even hyperventilating. They're not breathing properly. And so much can be solved by getting into the correct breathing patterns, which feels weird. It feels really like threatening for people. Physiologically, you would think, oh, but immediately it should be relaxing. It is not. It's very triggering.
Foreign. I really was just talking to one of the employees at the clinic, a new employee at the clinic yesterday, about breath and breathing. And I gave her the example of a particular client I had worked with probably 4 years ago, maybe 5, who was so just lived in stress zone probably forever, but for a really, really, really long time, that when she started to do her breath work, she would have panic reactions. Like the second or she would get any little bit of that relaxation release, that change, she would get a stress response. And she was awesome. I was like, give me a week. Let's just keep, you keep playing with it.
Mhm.
And sure enough, it flipped and she never looked back. But it was such a foreign feeling to her.
Yeah.
So I love that you highlighted that, because it can be real. And I think you use the
Mhm.
example of like bracing for bad news. And so many with chronic pain, chronic illness are
Mhm.
just braced, period. They're braced
All the
for
time.
the pain that's going to happen when they move a limb or whatever,
Mhm. Mhm.
or braced because they're expecting not to have the energy to get through all the things.
Right.
So this isn't just an acute situation kind of thing. This is really for
Yes.
that day to day,
Mhm.
which is amazing. So how because as much as I wanted to talk to you, if we were only going to talk about people who could come to Hawaii and learn to free dive with you, this wasn't
Mhm.
going to be very helpful for listeners.
Right.
How do
Absolutely.
you take, this beautiful melding of these worlds and help people on dry land?
I'm glad you asked that because that's my favorite thing to do. So I help people map out their nervous system. So remember I talked about polyvagal. I've created some worksheets that ask questions based on each of the zones. We rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. We find those kind of anything that's like at the higher end or lower end of the spectrum, then I know those are places we need to start looking at. And these are like emotional questions, physiological questions. I also use a tool from polyvagal folks. It's called the neuroception of psychological safety, and it hones in on the physiology. So this mapping process takes out a lot of the stigmatizing kind of things. This is like things we all experience. So I love how it's very neutralizing in that. So then we map the system, we find those hot spots or cold spots, and then we bring awareness to those areas. We just recognize them as slowly as we need to go. But once you learn how to bring in awareness, you can start doing it with the right person. The support, you need the support to do this. I believe it's important. Like I said before, I'm not going to throw someone into their entire body so they feel pain.
Right.
We want to find those pockets of safety and strength in the body. So one client, she's like, I have the best quads. They are so strong. And I was like, okay, well, there's your safety. Like, that's amazing. You can stabilize yourself and you can go there and find reassurance. Okay, if you're strong there, okay, surely you're strong somewhere else. So then we start with how to self-regulate. We get ice packs. Because a big part of freediving and releasing the body has to do with that MDR, the mammalian dive response. So if we add the cold water, quote unquote, with the ice packs on the back of the neck and on the chest, thoracic spine, or on the face, I caution people to do it on the face because it's pretty intense. You want to build up to it. So thoracic spine, so mid back, the ice pack there seems to be effective enough for this process to start. Then we learn breath work. we learn how, and it's based on the individual, of course, but I do a 5-2-10 breathing, which is a 5-second inhale, a 2-second pause, and a 10-second exhale. Exhale is double the inhale because on the exhale, you're activating your rest and digest.
Yep.
Now you've got that cold water feeling on your back. Your heart rate in 2 minutes is going to drop down. And every time I've tested this, I worked out at 120 heartbeat, did the necessary 2-minute cool up, laid down on the ice pack, did my breath work, and it dropped back down in the 60s within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
What can that do for pain management? A lot. If you are tense, you're not breathing, and your heart rate's activated or elevated because you're scared, you're nervous. Oh my God, here comes a migraine. Great, I've lost the rest of my day. If you implement this, even this kind of practice, as soon as you can, especially if you're at home and you sense the thing coming, whatever your thing happens to be, and you do this practice, who knows? It might steer you off onto a different course. And even if it reduces the time lost by 2 hours, that's huge. Right? Or your pain scale goes down from an 8 to a 6. That's still a lot of reduction. So we do breath work, the ice packs, and we're bringing in that awareness, and we're finding the tension points and we're releasing them.
I love it. And the breath is so powerful when we learn how to use it properly and intentionally. I just recently was talking to a client who he does a lot of fun biohacky kind of stuff. But I pointed out that he was kind of missing like a really, really big piece. He would cold plunge and then, not warm himself up. He would cold plunge and wrap into, and I was like, the whole point is the regulation, and he had part of it down. But the power in using your breath to warm yourself back up, you're missing the gold if you're, just torturing yourself in cold water. And he was actually breathing through that part, but he had never really learned the whole method of. And I'm not telling people run out and take a little bit of Elaine and a little of that. I'm just saying,
right.
You can. When I did my Wim Hof training, I did it in winter outside in Colorado. And I was like, oh, this was dumb. It was great. It was great. And it really, it's that believing, it's that same moment, right? That your women who, once they find their tension and release it, can all of a sudden stay underwater, and never knew they could do that. And then it's like, ooh, what else can I do? Right. Then it's like just this beautiful, beautiful spiral. And so I just want to highlight things that I think are really, everything you said was important, but finding that zone of safety is important, right? You're not re-traumatizing people. You're not, there is a way to heal that doesn't have to be painful. And I wanted to ask, because I had the thought as you were talking about it, you mentioned when you were talking about hot spots and cold spots. And I think most people can, and I shouldn't assume, but I think most of us think we know what a hot spot is. What would you say a cold spot is?
Anywhere you're really disconnected from. And I think that's real personalized, but I would say if you're someone who's had to spend a lot of time resting, laying down, I'm thinking your glutes, your hamstrings, your legs, your feet. What's going on with them guys? Is there something that you could do, whether it's ankle rolls, bringing your feet up and flexing them? Can you squeeze? And I teach this in all my classes, squeeze and release the glutes. Squeeze and release them. Bring awareness and awaken them. If it doesn't cause you pain, right? And this is all based on, this is why it's so personalized, but I wanted to circle back to the breathing and say
Yeah.
we've never, ever, never use Wim Hof in the water. We never do hyperventilation in the water. Every freediving agency has a standard protocol for the relaxation or breathe out phase, which is 2 minutes. So we're not just willy-nilly doing all these weird breathing
Right.
things and holding our breath. It's 2 minutes of tidal breathing and a big final breath and then holding your breath. But I just want to make sure that if someone
Well,
decides to
and I'm
try
glad you
that,
said that because I think
yeah,
people have a misconception of Wim Hof breathing and Wim Hof method. And being
right.
trained in the Wim Hof method, you don't do that
Yes.
breathing in the water either.
No.
You do it to prepare, and then you use different breath to warm back up. So I love that you highlighted that because
Yeah.
honestly, proper Wim Hof, you're not hyperventilating in the water either. So
Right. But, we get excited when we hear new podcasts and we're like, I'm going to go try that. It's going to help
right.
me with my pain.
Yeah.
And yes, freediving can help you with pain management because of the MDR, because you're in a relaxed state
But
body.
not just like,
But
go
not,
get
oh,
yourself
yes.
equipment and jump in the water. This is
No,
not what we're talking about.
yes, take a class, take at least an intro or like a try freediving or snorkeling class or just go in the pool and relax. But, and relax, I mean like laying on your back.
Right.
Breathing. Just lay
Yeah.
on your back and float if you can, because that takes all the weight off your body. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to put that
I thank
caution.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, everything when I hear something and I'm like, "Ooh, I want to try that." I do what you recommended. You find your expert that feels right to you and you don't do these things alone. I am not
uh-huh.
advocating anybody try
Never
any of
free dive
this.
alone.
Mm-mm.
Never. That is the number one rule of free diving. It's
Yeah.
snorkeling. You never go alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so to circle back onto land, because right now I'm looking out my windows and we're covered in snow. And I want to know if
Yeah.
listeners are in a similar, excuse me, locale. You work with people on land.
I do. Yeah, I do. And like I said, it goes back to like bringing awareness and mapping the nervous system. I do some education, like I explain the zones, I explain the blended states and what each area is responsible for, and then how they kind of work together. And then from there, we learn how to work with the vagus nerve. We learn how to work with these different zones. We learn how to work with our cranial nerves because those are key for not only, and this is where the magic happened for me, those cranial nerves are not only responsible for our ability to talk, communicate, find support, they're also responsible for every single freediving function that we have. Equalization, I pointed to the ears, but also I'm going to point to the throat because we use our throat muscles to equalize our ears as well. And you've been scuba diving, you've kind of had those sensations, And then if you have tension in your trigeminal, if you have TMJ or if you have migraines, tension in your jaw is going to be a place that we're going to go try to release. So this mapping system really it can get pretty deep, no pun intended, into this like
Really?
physiology, really, this deep dive into your body, and this information you get back is so layered and beautiful, and there's always something we can work with. So
Yes.
everything I do starts on land, and then if someone wants to try this out in the water, there's different levels to this as well. We can sit by the ocean and talk about it. We can put our toes in. We can float in 2 or 3 feet of water. I've had people floating who said they would never float ever. I had them floating. We can start there, and then we can build on that. We can also help people with breath holding because the other part of activating the MDR is the breath hold.
Okay.
So we bring the heart rate down, we do the breath work, and then we hold our breath. And that gives you so much control and power within your body because now you can sit and deliberately experience distress.
Right.
And build up a tolerance to it.
Yes.
And there was a fascinating study that came out about how people with panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, are improper breathers, and they're responding to their natural fire alarm, the CO2,
Mm-hmm.
which tells you, hey, it's like
Alert,
poking
alert.
someone, like, breathe, please, something
Hello.
is wrong, which is what we respond to underwater. Our CO2, when you hold your breath, your CO2 starts building up. And in freediving, we learn how to, it's still built up, but we're not responding to it. We're
Yeah.
choosing not to respond. We're finishing our dive. We come back up with grace, with calm, with presence. We come to the surface. We do our recovery breathing, which is very important after a breath hold. And then you can go, oh, that really sucked. But I'm okay. So each time you do that, you add 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4
So
seconds.
empowering.
That's
Yeah.
mastery. That's mastery.
Yeah.
So,
And for those that haven't already connected those dots, that mastery helps you regulate and respond instead of react. Like that's what gives you that space
yes.
to, just take that half a beat and not be just,
Yeah.
really not in the driver's seat of your day, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this is when we tell the neuroception, okay, I've got it from here.
Mhm.
I know I'm safe. I have my safety diver. My friend is right there. Literally, the surface is in 4 feet. I'm fine. I can hold my breath for another few seconds.
Yeah.
And honestly, in an emergency situation, human beings can hold their breath for up to 4 minutes without up to 4 minutes. Like, it's going to depend, but without without brain damage, usually. And this is why also you should never snorkel or dive with your snorkel in your mouth. Anytime you're going under the water, unless you're scuba diving, you take your contraption out of your mouth, because if you do hit your head or black out, you've got a funnel of death bringing oxygen to your lungs. If you black out without that in your mouth, we have all these natural protective mechanisms that will kind of shut everything down and protect you. So just remember that you can hold your breath for 30 seconds. You're not going to have brain damage.
Yeah.
Okay?
No matter what signals you're receiving in the moment, it's a practice.
It is a practice. And then that's where the beauty of how we can put this on pain management. How can we put this on dealing with these unfortunate long-term circumstances when we have like autoimmune conditions or long COVID? Is if you can put off the sensation for a couple of seconds and you keep building upon that, it's so empowering. You can opt in or opt out of the response.
Absolutely. And
it takes practice. Yeah.
It does take practice. And again, find a guide. I find Elaine, find whatever resonates with you. Yeah. We're not made to journey alone. And so, for any of these, it's all retraining, right? It took years for our nervous system to get where it is, wherever yours is. And so finding a professional to help you learn to shift it is really key, really, really key. Well, I love what you're doing. I am so excited about it because I can see, for me, just my kind of long history and it just feels like I'm always looking for shortcuts back to that, like biohacker brain, right? And yes, I just said it's a practice. It is a practice. But my whole purpose in life is to empower people to take charge of their wellness and improve it. And that's what you're doing, is you're allowing people to actually feel the power they have. And that's what keeps us going, right? That's where it's the more and more and more. Well, what else can I control? What has my body been telling me all these years that I wasn't tapped into?
Yes. And I do want to throw one more thing in there.
Yes.
That a lot of the times the people I'm working with have positive benefits in the first session. Some of this stuff works right away. Yes, you need to practice breath work, but here's what makes freediving so amazing as a healing modality is you are playing. And when you're playing, you're in that like neurobiochemical opposite of trauma. So, and then in psychology, especially positive psychology, if we are playing, we are more likely to make a change. If you're
Yes.
playing, you feel safe. If you're safe, you can change your nervous system state.
Yes. I love
So you
it.
can
And for
change.
so many, play is something that is not a big enough
Yeah.
presence in their life at whatever point if they're listening to this podcast. So I love that you brought that up. It's that healing power of play and joy while learning to change physiology is amazing.
Yes.
So
And you
amazing.
can go because all of these should be free, cost effective. Like, I hate to make people spend money, especially in our economy. If you can get a thing of bubbles
Uh-huh.
and blow bubbles, you can practice your breathing 5-10. You do, or 4-8. You're blowing through the bubbles, making those bubbles with your exhale. This is great for kids to teach them how to breathe. I did it with a room full of social work students at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And when we got back into class, they all started falling asleep because they were finally
relaxed
physiologically. And I was like, well, I think this backfired a little bit, but it was
I'm
a
going to
good
do this
lesson.
at the end of class next time.
I know, but we wouldn't
I
have
love
had the
that.
sunlight to reflect off the bubbles because it was a multi kind of.
Yeah.
Then you can do photography and savor and blah blah, so like and have a good time. But we can
Use all those
incorporate
senses.
play in tiny ways.
I love that. I think you just answered the question I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
But
tiny ways.
I'm going to ask anyway, in case you want to throw a different one out or just
Yeah.
highlight what you just said, which is what is one step listeners can take starting today. I think that's a beautiful one step. It's one that nobody's ever given us before. It makes me want to go run out and get bubbles.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It really is. You can't be angry and blow bubbles. You know? Yeah.
No.
So I would say that. And then another step is get an ice pack, put it on your back, lay on it for 5 minutes and track your heart rate, see what happens. Track your tension, see what happens. Do you fall asleep? If you fall asleep, then there's your answer. And I actually lay on an ice pack every night before bed for about 20 minutes on my mid back. Because if you've had trauma and you're in chronic pain, your body is going to keep up this low state of hypervigilance to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the answer to that? Rest and digest.
Yeah.
That's what the MDR is going to do for you.
I love it.
It's beautiful.
So amazing. Well, Elaine, I so appreciate your time, your wisdom, your just creative approach to helping people not only heal but just that empowerment that can lead to healing, but it can lead to dreams being achieved and created and just all kinds of wonderful things. So I'm really, really grateful. For people that are listening on the go and not going to look at the show notes, where's the best place to find you?
On Instagram, I'm the underwater therapist, the only one, the underwater therapist, or my website, theunderwatertherapist.com. And I am on Facebook as well. But I think the most up-to-date and fun, practical stuff is going to be on Instagram. I share videos and different techniques. And plus, you also can get the benefit of free diving without touching the water by watching some videos and practicing your breath work while watching them. So
amazing. More tips for healing on land.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Yes. So, and of course, if anybody wants to come learn how to dive, I would love to be your guide on that journey. It's so much fun.
Fantastic. Hawaii, here we come.
Mm-hmm.
Elaine, thank you so very much.
Thank you too. This has been really awesome.
For everyone listening, remember you can get the transcripts and show notes by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.